Over the past several weeks, I've been working on some modifications to my Harman Titan 4x5 pinhole camera. The first modification that I made was to add a 90mm Super Agilon f8 lens to one of the lens cones. In this video, I'm testing out a new modification that I've made to my camera. I've adapted a Mamiya 6x7 rollback to a 4x5 film holder. This allows me to capture both pinhole and fixed focused lens images with the same camera. So it's time to test out what kind of quality images I can capture with this. This is a scene I have photographed several times, and I felt that with it being familiar to me, I could assess just how close I got with my measurements of the rollback film in relation to the lens. And I've shot one 90mm fixed focused negative. Now I'm changing over to a 72mm pinhole lens cone. And here I am winding to the second frame on the roll of film. I'm using Ilford XP2 400 that I'll develop with HC, Kodak HC110 with a dilution of H, which is 1 plus 63. And I'm taking notes of what I did both with the 90mm and with the 72mm lens cone. So let's look at the photos. So it's obvious here. This is the 90mm. It's a little soft focus, and then we'll go on to the 70mm pinhole, which is what you see is typical for a pinhole image. But I'm happy. Now I'm at another location that I have photographed several times previously. It's Cards Stream in the town of Franklin, Maine. Quite often you'll see a bald eagle landing on the tree and fishing for fish in the stream. And so because I had the 72mm cone on the previous shot, I'm doing this first shot with a 72mm pinhole. So sliding back in the dark slide after counting out my exposure, and now I'm changing over to the 90mm lens cone. And I have found that I have to sometimes push the previous lens cone out of the frame by removing the film back. It's a pretty tight fit, but it's kind of neat to be able to swap back and forth. So here I am about to take a exposure, rolling, moving the film forward, advancing the film forward, and grabbing a hold of the shutter release, and away we go. Pull out the dark slide and click the shutter release, and then put the dark slide back in. So first up, we have the pinhole, 72mm pinhole image, and did a nice job of flattening out the water, kind of a typical shot for a pinhole image. And then the second one is the 90mm fixed focus lens. Here again, you can see a little bit of the softness in the image. It isn't as sharp as it could be, and I plan to work on that to make an adjustment to tighten up that focus. Just up the road from Card Stream, there's another scene that I like to photograph. I've photographed it many times, and yes, it's a sad story right there of this house. I'm hoping someday to be there shooting a photo or video basically, and catch it falling down. So because the previous image was captured on the 90mm, that's what I'm setting up here to shoot this house with, and just checking the f-stop and cocking the shutter and getting ready to capture an image of this house. Again, this is fixed focus. I had to be very accurate with my measurements from the lens board to the ground glass I originally used, and I'm pretty pleased with how this has turned out. Now I'm hoping to achieve the same thing with the 6x7 rollback. And as I've already mentioned, I do need to make an adjustment. That last image, I decided not to take a pinhole. I wanted to move ahead here closer to the house, and I still have the 90mm lens attached to the front of the camera. And I captured an image right there. And now I'm setting up with the 72mm lens cone. I wanted to compare a kind of a close-up image of the pinhole and the 90mm lens. What I'm going to do is save these particular images for the end of the video. They were my favorite. Now I've moved on to my final location for my test run of the 6x7 rollback film holder, and I'm at what's known as Pine Knoll in the town of Franklin, Maine. And if you can hear the wind in the background, yeah, I'm getting a little bit cold and I haven't really dressed for it, but I wanted to really see what this camera would do in a pretty big wide open landscape type scene. Because the last shot was taken with a 72mm pinhole lens cone, I'm going to start with that. Before leaving home, I had dug around in my old camera stuff and I found some Coke and filter. So I'm holding an orange Coke and filter in front of the pinhole. There's a lot of white snow on the ground and white clouds in the sky, and I wanted to try to make them pop a little bit. And I'm doing the same thing here with the 90mm lens cone. I've slid the orange Coke and filter in front of it. Yeah, I had an old holder too within my kind of surplus camera gear. And so I checked the aperture setting and cocked the shutter and going to pull the dark slide here and then trigger the shutter. Before I move on to taking a look at those two images, I figured I'd give you a look at what I was seeing and trying to capture with the camera. Lots of wide open sky and wide open ground. Those are blueberry barrens, by the way. And so here's the first photo. It's the 72mm lens cone and kind of a classic shot of a long exposure and the clouds being blurred in the sky. And now we'll move on to the 90mm fixed focus lens, and here the image is sharper, but not as sharp as I know I can get it. But you know, I'm just experimenting. It's the first time out with this 6x7 rollback. Now we're going to go back to those images of the old house, and this is the 90mm shot, and boy, I was quite tickled with it. But the weird thing is when I'm looking at this image on my computer, the bushes there on the right are in better focus than the house is. So I know I need to move the film plane closer to the lens. And here's the 72mm pinhole shot. Again, kind of fuzzy, typical of pinhole photography. But yeah, I'm kind of happy with how this is turning out. And the final image here is of the house, and this was my favorite shot of the experiment. So anyway, I learned quite a bit. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll be looking to put together another video here in the near future. Before I left, I figured I would show kind of a close-up of what I've done here. Essentially, I glued the Mamiya 6x7 rollback to your standard 4x5 sheet film holder. I cut a hole through the septum so that I'd have a clear shot at the film. And so it's worked pretty well. I just have to figure out how to move the film plane closer to the lens for a sharper focused image. But For a first shot at this, I'm pretty pleased, and looking forward to working with this even more. All right, well, that's it for this video, and take care.